Murder at Ocean View College, Chapter 10, Dinner at Danny's. Jade stood at the big front window looking out. She could see her reflection in the window. She was wearing a white silk dress that hung to her ankles. Her shoes were white with silver buckles on the toes for decoration. Her long black hair was twisted and pinned on the top of her head, and there were chopsticks with pearl handles stuck through her hair. She touched the string of pearls around her neck, and little pearl earrings in her ears. On her right hand was a pearl ring set in gold. She checked her watch and bit her lip, folded and unfolded her arms, crossed her arms over her chest, and then uncrossed them. She checked her watch again. It was 7:20. She sat down and stood up and sat down again. She looked down the street to the left, then down the street to the right, and frowned. Danny is late again, she thought, while staring at her watch. At 7:25, he drove his white Mustang, 12 years old, clean, but with dents in the fender. Take two, page 37 at 7:25. Take two. At 7:25, he drove his white Mustang, 12 years old, clean, but with dents in the fender, into the driveway and hopped out. As soon as he rang the bell, Jade opened the door and grabbed his arm in a tight grip. "Wow, you look great," Danny said, and then smiled his approval and gave her a quick kiss. He looked at her, frowned, and asked, "What's wrong?" "My parents will like you. They have to. You're 19, you're beautiful, and I love you." "What's not to like?" The corners of her mouth turned up in the tiniest smile, and she loosened her grip on his arm just a little. Danny picked up her coat, looked at the grip on his arm, and told her, "If you want to wear this coat, you're going to have to let go of my arm for just a minute." Then she told him that she had to speak to her mother before they left. Jade left Danny and went back to the kitchen, where her mother was. They were speaking in Cantonese, so she knew Danny wouldn't understand the words. She was glad of that. Her mother didn't want her going out with Danny, but she didn't feel that she could always be the dutiful daughter. When she returned, she noticed that Danny looked worried, but didn't ask about it. Instead, she let Danny open the door for her, help her into the car, and fasten the seatbelt. He got in, started the engine, and backed out of the driveway. Jade let out her breath, and they sat in silence for the first few blocks. While they rode across town, Jade quizzed herself on his family. "Your brothers are Johnny and Carlos. Your sisters are Gloria and Rosa?" she asked. "Right," Danny said. "Carlos is older than you. The girls are younger?" "Right again." He turned his head to look at her while they were waiting for the red light to change. He squeezed her hand and winked. "Relax. You're doing fine," he smiled. "I'm so nervous. We've been trying to set up this meeting for almost a year. I don't want to blow it now." "We won't." As they pulled into the Soto's family's, page 38, bottom, last paragraph, second take. As they pulled into the Soto family's driveway, Jade could see young faces in a cluster at the front window, and before Danny could park the car, she saw the front door burst open and two young people tumbled out to greet them. When they walked in, her ears immediately caught the loud salsa music coming from a stereo somewhere in the back room. She looked around. There were family pictures on tables and on the walls. Above the fireplace, there was a picture of Jesus on a big wooden cross. Jade remembered that Mr. and Mrs. Soto were very religious. Danny introduced his siblings. Johnny wore shiny black pants and a pale blue shirt. He looked about 16, and Jade thought he looked like he was ready to go dancing. He smiled, took her hand, and kissed it. Gloria was wearing a large white flower in her long reddish hair. Carlos wore glasses and was quiet and shy, but Jade could tell that he liked her. Carlos was only a year older than Danny, if she remembered correctly. Rosa was only 8 and very excited. She took Jade's hand and jumped up and down, saying, "I'm going to sit by you." Danny led Jade into the kitchen to meet his mother. Jade looked around quickly at the dishes and mess in the kitchen, and her nose caught the scent of something wonderful cooking. In front of the stove stood Mrs. Soto, a short, round woman with graying hair. The older woman wiped her hands on her old blue apron, nodded to Jade, and said, "Hello," and smiled politely, but that was all. She did not start a conversation. Danny took Jade's hand and led her out of the hot kitchen. Jade bit her lip, then coughed nervously. She wondered where Mr. Soto was. Could he be hiding? She put her arms around Danny's neck and pulled him closer so that she could whisper in his ear. "Where is your father?" "Probably in his workshop. He'll be in." "Why are you whispering?" "It's okay. You're allowed to talk." Jade giggled nervously, but tried to relax. They proceeded to the living room. She heard the music as they got nearer. She saw that somebody had rolled the carpet back from the floor, leaving a wide space in the middle of the room. The space was just right for dancing. They watched Johnny teaching Rosa to dance. Back, forward, to the left, faster, good. The others gave advice from the sidelines. Listen to the rhythm. Take smaller steps. Turn around. Soon, Gloria and Carlos got up and started to dance. Then, Danny asked Jade if she would like to dance with him. Of course. She smiled, and they joined the others on the living room dance floor. When Mrs. Soto came in to announce dinner, Jade looked at her watch and noticed that it was already 8:15. She remembered that dinner was supposed to be at 7:30. She's late, like Danny, she thought. Maybe it's a family tradition. A late dinner didn't bother her, though, because she wasn't really very hungry. The party moved toward the dining room, and as they turned the corner, Jade took in wonderful smells coming from a very full table. She was just a little surprised to see a handsome, older man already sitting at the head of the long table. Danny introduced Jade to his father. Jade smiled and looked at Mr. Soto. She could see an older version of Danny. The older man stood up and held out his hand to shake hers, then told everyone to be seated. He did not smile, and this made Jade nervous again. She took a seat between Danny and Rosa. After praying over the food, Mr. Soto picked up a platter of tamales and held it for Jade while she served herself. Then she helped Rosa and passed the platter to Danny. Her plate was filled with salad, beans, rice, tamales, and something she didn't recognize. It looked like an egg roll. She took a deep breath and decided that everything was going to be okay. She wanted to say something nice about Mrs. Soto's cooking, so she used her fork to pick up some food. She tasted it. "These egg rolls are delicious," she said, after taking a bite of the unfamiliar food. There was a moment of silence while everyone looked at Jade. "Taquitos. Those are taquitos," Mrs. Soto corrected her. "Oh," Jade replied, feeling a little embarrassed. She could feel her face burning. The dinner got worse when Mr. Soto looked right at her and spoke. "Danny tells me that your family is from Hong Kong. How long have you been here in California?" "I was just a baby when they immigrated," Jade replied. "You know, we are all citizens here, even though we immigrated from Mexico," Mr. Soto continued. "And we have kept our customs from Mexico. Danny was born here, so he knows a lot about American ways. But his mother and I enjoy the old traditions of Mexico. And we are Catholic. Jade sucked in her breath and looked right at Mr. Soto. I, too, am a citizen. I became a naturalized citizen many years ago. My parents also taught me the old traditional Chinese ways. My father passed away a couple of years ago, so now it's just my mother and me. We keep the Chinese traditions. She grabbed Danny's hand and closed her mouth tight, afraid that she had already said too much. What about the Catholic Church? Would his parents be very upset that she was not Catholic? Should she become Catholic? Could she? She looked around the table at Danny's siblings. Carlos had his eyes directly on his plate. He looked afraid. Johnny looked angry. Rose's eyes were as big as the dinner plates. Danny tried to distract everyone from the tension around the table. He told a joke about a dog and a fire hydrant. Nobody laughed. Then he started talking about the murder at Ocean View College. Slowly, everyone turned eyes on Danny, but the tension in the air was very heavy for the rest of the meal.